This is simply an overview, a very outline type look at ancient Rome up to the advent of Christianity in this case. So from 500 BC and to the year 0, or in this case, probably about the year 60 BC. I'm just covering the section from about 500 BC to about 60 BC, about there. All right. The Romans create a republic. Now, this is the beginnings of Rome. Now, according to legend, Roman legend, Rome was founded in 753 BC by Romulus and Remus, who were twin brothers suckled by the she-wolf, that legend. And it might have had something to, in fact, but there's the legend that the Romans knew. Rome developed because of its strategic location and its fertile soil. Built on the Tiber River, which is near the center of the Italian peninsula, the boot. The early republic. Now in 509 BC, the last king of Rome was Tarquin the Proud, and he was a harsh tyrant who was driven out of power. Romans declared they would never again be ruled by a king, swore to put to death anyone who plotted to make himself a king. Now, after deposing the monarch, Tarquin the Proud, the Romans established a new government called a republic. Now, a republic is a form of government in which power rests with the citizens, who have the right to vote to select their leaders. So it's a representative. Patricians and Plebeians. Different groups of Romans struggled for power. One group was the Patricians, or the aristocratic landowners who held most of the power. The plebeians, common farmers, artisans, and merchants who made up the majority of the population. Government under the Republic. In place of a king, Rome had two officials called consuls. So instead of a singular, might turn into a king. They're so opposed to that. So they had two people ruling together called consuls. They commanded the army and directed the government, but their power was limited. A consul's term was 1 year long. The same person could not be elected consul again for 10 years. One consul could always overrule or veto the other consul's decision. The Senate was an aristocratic branch of the Roman government. Had both legislative and administrative functions in the Republic. There were 300 members, and they were chosen from upper class of Roman society. So in a sense, they were lawmakers, legislative, and administrative, sort of like the executive branch. They have that powers. 300 members, upper class Roman society. In times of crisis, the Republic could appoint a dictator, which is a leader who had absolute power to make laws and command the army. Now, they adopted this system from the Greeks, and this form of dictator was actually seen as a good thing. It's sort of emergency powers, and it would avoid a chaotic situation. So one person could reign in control and bring order back. So they've noticed this as a good thing. Rome spreads its power. In 264 BC, Rome and Carthage went to war, which was the beginning of the Punic Wars. Rome and Carthage fought 3 wars from 264 and 146 BC. Rome controls the Mediterranean, so the whole Mediterranean Sea is the concern. Rome's victories in the Punic Wars gave it domination over the western side of the Mediterranean. Alright, in this section, the Roman Empire brings change. Expansion creates problems in the Republic. Most serious was the widening gap between rich and poor. Now, this is a reoccurring theme in history and a reoccurring theme in various places all over the world, even concurrent of today. But back in Rome, this was one of the problems coming up in the Republic, the widening gap between rich and poor. Romans had made slaves of thousands of captured peoples during the wars. Now, at this time, and especially for the Romans, but others as well, when the conquered nation after the war, the winners would enslave the captors. They would take them captive and make them slaves. That was basically what happened at this time in history a lot. But the Romans, with their insatiable quest for conquest, and conquest after conquest of smaller nations, kept accumulating more and more captured people whom they promptly made slaves. So this produced the fact that slaves formed about 1/3 of Rome's population. The Republic collapses. In the year 60 BC, Julius Caesar joined forces with Crassus, a wealthy Roman, and Pompey, a popular general. So at this point, Julius Caesar is basically just a military general type, military. So he joins forces with Crassus and Pompey. Caesar was elected as a triumvirate, a group of 3 rulers. So this is his rise to power. Crassus was already wealthy. Pompey was already a well-known and popular military general, and they held military conquest in high regard. They were established, and Julius Caesar joins their ranks in this group of 3 called the triumvirate. However, Caesar was a strong leader and a genius at military strategy. He appointed himself governor of Gaul, which is the area known as France now. Caesar's successes in Gaul made him very popular with people of Rome, because the conquering brings back people, slaves, and all the fruits of that land, which was a very good haul, as they say. Pompey, who became Caesar's political rival by now, feared Caesar's ambitions and ordered Caesar to disband his legions and return home, which would be Rome. So Pompey, hearing and seeing the conquest and fruits of the conquest of Gaul, and seeing how Caesar is just going farther and farther up this rank of popularity from the worms, he just took order from the Senate and told, disband your armies and return to Rome. Now Caesar defied the Senate's orders, which led to a civil war. Now don't make Caesar the name, it's a name, don't make it equal to like a ruling title. It was a name. So it defied the Senate's orders, and a civil war broke out with that. Caesar took his armies across the Rubicon River. So he's bringing his armies back, the legions, and instead of disbanding them, he's leading them back to Rome in Italy. Now the Rubicon River is, you might say, an outlying boundary of Rome. And it was illegal to bring an army into the actual home territory of Rome. It's considered an attack. It could turn into an attack. So that is the point where when he crossed the Rubicon, which becomes that common phrase, not that common, but it becomes that phrase, crossing the Rubicon, the point of no return. So when Caesar took his armies across the Rubicon River, he was in that illegal area of marching into Rome with his legions and military force. So at that point, he had to go all the way. Defeated Pompey's armies. So by the time he was going into Rome with his conquering legions of army and his military forces of all those legions, Pompey fled. He got out of there. And the rest of Pompey's armies were defeated. I mean, Pompey fled out of Rome, but then Caesar continued and conquered Pompey's armies in Greece, Asia, Spain, and then Egypt. And then he returned back home to Rome, and he had all the support from the people. The same year, Caesar is appointed dictator. So the aspect of being a conquering leader was nearly everything in the eyes of the Roman people. It brought them wealth, it brought them slaves, it brought them all this goods from other lands. And they felt secure and defended. And the more of a military leader, strategic and successful in victory, the more the people loved the person. So he was appointed dictator, and in 44 BC, they simply appointed him dictator for life. So they wanted him in that special position, which they held in high regard. Dictator was not a bad word. It was a special office. So they appointed him dictator for life. Caesar's reforms. So Caesar governed as an absolute ruler, one who has total power. Granted Roman citizenship, expanded the Senate, helped the poor by creating jobs, started colonies where landless could own land, and he increased the soldier pay. So he's the only one in power in a sense, but creating good reforms as a person who had the benefit of the people and the nation in his goals. So absolute rulers, if you have a good person in power, it works. But if that person, the danger is if that person is not, or turns. Nobles and senators were troubled by Caesar's growing power, success, and popularity. One, their own ambitions were being shadowed over, and two, since he had absolute power for life, who knows where that could lead. So they had selfish and then also legitimate concerns. His friend Marcus Brutus and Gaius Cassius plotted his assassination. More had plotted his assassination, but these are the two main people who forefronted the assassination. And on March 15th, the middle of March, in the year 44 BC, the group of senators stabbed him to death on the floor of the Senate or on the steps of the Senate, depending on how accurate the history is. And that's the term Ides of March, or middle of March. Beginning of an empire. So notice the end of the republic and now the empire. After Caesar's death, civil war broke out again because they didn't have that unifying leader. It destroyed what was left of the Roman Republic, vast and powerful empire. For 207 years, peace and prosperity reigned throughout the empire known as Pax Romana, literally Latin for peace of Rome. At this time, the Roman Empire included more than 3 million square miles and about 60 to 80 million people. Emperors and succession. So the succession problem, which was who was to rule next, was it father to son, was it in the family, or if it was someone appointed, it was a problem, and the plotting of the person who was the leader, etc. But the problem was temporarily solved by the leaders who ruled in succession, one after the other, but the leaders known as the 5 good emperors. So Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antonius Pius, and Marcus Aurelius. And a few of these names you might know: Trajan, conqueror, Hadrian with Hadrian's Wall, and Marcus Aurelius with his Meditations. The rise of Christianity. And that is the end of this part, and that is for another time. Thank you for listening and watching.